The jihadist candidate for mayor of New York, Zoran Mamdani, has been leading in the polls by a significant margin. A couple of days ago, the current mayor of New York, Mayor Adams, has dropped out of the race, uh, meaning that it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult for Mamdani to win. Now, his lead in the polls, the last I saw, was it's like 20% over Andrew Cuomo, who was second in the polls. The next two candidates were Mayor Adams and the Republican Curtis Sliwa, who combined don't get 20% of the vote. So, how much will this help? Is there still any hope for New York? You know, even saying that, I know, I hear in my head what I'm saying as what I'm looking at as the hope is Andrew Cuomo. Yeah, things are tough. Welcome to the Daily Objective. I'm Razi Ginsburg. I'm joined by James Valiant. James, yeah, is there hope at the very least that Mamdani is not going to win in November?
Well, the only chance would is seeing this happen. Adams drop out, and it would be better if much better if Sliwa dropped out. I have seen a poll that shows them about even in a one-on-one matchup, Cuomo versus Mamdani. Obviously, Sliwa would doesn't stand a chance. But to answer your question, does New York have a hope for a good mayor? No, 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 none whatever. No matter who on the ballot gets elected, New York, I'm afraid, all of my friends, dear friends from New York, I lived there myself 40 years ago for some years, but all my friends in New York, sorry, your mayor is going to suck. Whoever gets elected. There is no hope in that sense. Now, is there one candidate who stands out as particularly awful, egregious, and evil? If your choice of candidates is between, say Dwight Eisenhower or Adlai Stevenson, Ayn Rand would say, the famous philosopher and novelist said, it's not worth it. I mean, there's no difference between the two candidates. I mean, what is there to choose between these two guys? But when you do have a choice between bad and really god awful, hideous, then what you do is you back. I would, no matter how, morally speaking, if you think Sliwa would be better, even for all of his terrible ideas, I do not think he's a good an ideal candidate by any stretch. But even if you think he would be noticeably better, I would not
Wait,
vote for him.
okay, finish that thought, but I was gonna open that whole can of worms up.
Okay, I would vote for an inferior candidate who I thought could beat Mamdani. That is
All
the
right.
moral thing to do.
So Akira kind of also leads to the point I was going to get to. He says Adams dropping secures Mamdani. Nobody is going to vote for Cuomo. The guy was in charge during the lockdowns. New York is done. I think, first of all, it's not nobody's going to vote for Cuomo. He is already second in the polls, like by a large margin from anybody who's third. And uh, Adams's votes are going to go, the majority of them are going to go to Cuomo. There's no doubt about that. I can't imagine any significant part of it because anybody who wants to vote for Mamdani is so out there that if you want to vote for him, you're already voting for him. It's not that you were gonna vote for Adams, who, was a bad mayor, was corrupt, and now you're gonna be like, oh, well, I can't vote for him. I'm gonna. No, look, I'm a major Cuomo-phobe. I fear him being in office. I think it's gonna be bad for New York. But yeah, when you look at the reason to vote for Cuomo has nothing to do with Cuomo. Now,
Right.
back to the point you were making. Curtis Sliwa is great. By the standards, by what we can expect somebody who is making it that far in politics, he's great. He's a super impressive guy, has a super impressive career of, fighting for New York against the mafia, when the mafia was a huge thing and winning. uh, and he's like, when I hear him talk, he's talking about cutting all these taxes and cutting the budget. Cutting taxes is easy to say. Cutting the budget is not as easy to say. That's what he's talking about. And he's talking about um, increasing cops, like hiring 7,000 more police. And yeah, that's the one part of the budget that needs to be increased in New York. It does need more police. Um, He's talking about cutting the education budget. It's really it's yeah. This is a candidate I would love to see him in office.
Well,
And
even if you think
yeah.
it will be significantly better than the other two that remain in the race, what we have to do, our priority now, is to stop Mamdani. The odds of Sliwa getting elected are practically nil. If he's there on the ballot, he only interferes with Cuomo's ability to defeat Mamdani. My priority is to defeat Mamdani. I do not see there being a realistic chance of Sliwa, however better he is. And that was really the point that I was making. In my view, he's imperfect, but even if you think he is noticeably better on a number of fronts than the other two, if he doesn't stand a snowball's chance in hell of winning, what you need to, and there's really, I mean, there's awful and then there's evil. What you do is you vote for awful over evil. We've got to stop Mamdani. I would vote for, a rock in my backyard before I would vote for Mamdani. I would vote for just about anything within the spec. I mean, obviously, if you're just as evil in some way, if you're KKK, but Mandami is like KKK. He is Hamas. He is the voice of Hamas. He compare. I mean, listen to what he says about Hamas. Now, I know he's not in charge of foreign policy, but it tells you so much about the guy. No, 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 I'm not a communist. I'm a democratic socialist who wants to socialize this and socialize that and socialize this. Okay, okay. And he quotes Karl Marx. No, and he is a total Islamist. I mean, he takes the Hamas position straight up, as I say. He is as pure, that is a pure kind of evil that needs to be thwarted. Now, there are Republicans who say, "Oh, it would be delightful if he won." Now he's the poster child for the Democratic Party, and we could, consolidate against, the new face of the Democratic Party, which is socialism. No, I don't think that way either. What we have to do is avoid a Marxist jihadist elected mayor of New York, and that is top priority that cancels everything else out going down the line. And stopping Mamdani has to be the strategy here, tactically speaking. No, wouldn't it be wonderful if we lived in a world where, it's Sliwa who would be the candidate and it's Cuomo who's very corrupt, but he's sort of corrupt, but in a Democrat of the kind that Americans have seen, most of my life. That kind of corrupt Democrat. He's not a Marxist jihadist like Mr. Mamdani is. Voting against Mr. Mamdani and doing the thing that has the best chances of making sure he doesn't become mayor is the overriding priority.
All right. I am very annoyed that I agree with you. Because because again, yeah, I listen to Sliwa and I have to have the, objectivist asterisk there of when you endorse something. Well, he's not an objectivist, but and he's nowhere near an objectivist, but
No, look,
considering
look, 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 look,
considering the
look.
other candidates in the past mayors.
Exactly. No, if you're up against, Ayn Rand had this situation occur in her life too. If it's George McGovern, who is definitely different from the Democrats of his age, versus Richard Nixon, and Richard Nixon, she had a very, very low opinion of Richard Nixon. What did she call him in 1964 to Playboy magazine? The champion Me Tooer and pragmatist. And I have to agree, he was awful. He solidified the gains of Johnson with Medicare and so forth. He
By
gave
the
us,
way,
yeah,
Cuomo is a different type of Me Too champion, but anyway, continue.
yeah, yeah. This is a different. Me Too is a different context. Then, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not funny. Cuomo is not a good man, but most politicians are not good people. I'm sorry to say, but, the people who want power are some of the worst specimens of humanity out there, generally speaking, especially in our terrible age, our culture, and our political context right now. Only the worst rise to the top, unfortunately. But stopping the very worst, in this case, when it is noticeably worse than the others, is the priority and the moral priority. So do not hesitate for 1 minute thinking, I'm voting for someone who's really, really bad. Cuomo did evil things. Yes, he did. He was a bad governor. The COVID lockdowns, the dishonesty we had there, the shoving people into convalescent hospital, then closing down the convalescent hospital, all these old people dying without even being able to see their relatives. I mean, truly a heartless monster, a corrupt politician, a power lusting pragmatist. Yeah, and he's still better than Zoran Mamdani, okay? Who was an outright jihadist, Marxist, who would socialize huge chunks of New York, the greatest city in the world.
Yeah. Um, Thank you, Mr. Men's Deluxe, for the super chat. Mr. Men's Deluxe says Mamdani is a mamzer. If that is the Hebrew, yeah, that is the Hebrew word, so it's not a nice word. And absolutely appropriate here. Okay, I wanna hear from Mamdani in a bit, but I also wanna. Here's the point with the whole you should vote for the person who you don't think is the best candidate because he has if Sliwa now does well in the polls, suddenly has,
Well,
rises
if
in
he
the polls.
surged 30 points, okay, then he'd be competitive.
So basically, we need to vote for the wrong person unless enough people are voting for the right person. We need to follow where the winds blow, basically.
Where our chances are best in avoiding such a horrible outcome. If the outcome is as bad as Mamdani, the bad is what you have to vote against. So it would be wrong to not vote, saying, okay, my guy doesn't have his chance of winning, or they're all bad, or take some kind of neutral position. That would not be the moral thing to do. If you understand anything about politics, voting against Mamdani and voting for the person who has the best chance to beat him, however bad that person is, because they are significantly, qualitatively better, even with Cuomo, qualitatively better than Mr. Mamdani. So the moral thing to do is to vote and to vote for a guy you think is rotten. Yeah, more look, a vote is not people when they shroud voting in some strange kind of religious atmosphere, some kind of mystic atmosphere. We have to vote taking into account all elements of the factual context. So the moral thing to do here would be to vote for an immoral politician. It sounds paradoxical, but believe me, in terms if life is the standard of your value, if your standard of moral value is human life on earth, then it seems to me a moral imperative that we make sure that Mamdani not get elected.
Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Yeah, James, I'm giving you a hard time, even though I agree with you. And let's hear from Mamdani to kind of emphasize the point of why, despite Cuomo being so absolutely despicable, that is the only correct choice that New Yorkers have come November 4th.
Many New Yorkers agree with you when they hear you condemning the war in Gaza and you talk about this at length, and on a day when everybody is weighing in this mayor's race on the Prime Minister Netanyahu's remarks this morning. Some New Yorkers say that they don't hear you as often condemn Hamas or talk about bringing the hostages home. So today, do you agree with Mr. Netanyahu's statement that Hamas is a terror organization that needs to be destroyed? And if you could speak the way he did on loudspeakers today to the 20 living hostages, what would your message be?
I am not going to echo the words of Benjamin Netanyahu. I can, however, share my own words and say them right here, which is that my politics is built on a universality, and I can think of no better illustration of that than from the words of the hostage families themselves. Everyone for everyone. It is something that they have said for months. It is something that they have called for in not only understanding that those hostages must be released, but that this is intertwined with the end of this genocide. And there are so many of us who have called for ceasefires precisely because the greatest moment of relief, whether it be in the release of hostages or the ending of the Israeli military's killing of Palestinians, is in those very moments of the cessation of hostilities, of that ceasefire. And so when we call for this, it is a call for hostages and Palestinians alike and understanding their dignity. And what has been so infuriating to me and to so many New Yorkers, frankly, is Benjamin Netanyahu's use of the hostages as a justification to continue a war.
Okay, all right, enough. Okay, just spoiler for people who want to go watch the whole video. That piece of shit does not condemn Hamas at any point, and goes out of his way to condemn Netanyahu at every point, and of course, does this thing where he uses the hostage families. Remember, this is not all the hostage families. This is the ones that Israeli media likes to highlight, and that Hamas and their supporters, as we see in this video by a Hamas supporter, they are the ones that those people dangle as proof that, even the hostage families agree with us. Look, uh, if you have a loved one who's held hostage, the fact that you would do anything to get them back is understandable. And but yeah, the fact that this guy uses them is despicable, as his inability to say, he sort of latches on to the part of her question where she says, will you echo the words of Netanyahu and condemn Hamas? And he latches on to the echo the words of Netanyahu part because he cannot condemn Hamas because he is a supporter of Hamas. He's a
Yeah,
supporter of Hamas. He's a supporter of their methods. He
yeah.
undoubtedly, even if he won't say it, supports October 7th and most likely 9/11 as well.
He is the voice of Hamas, loud and clear. Now, when he talks about universality, what he's talking about is egalitarianism between true evil and the good. That's what he means. He means that, in my view, there's really no difference between the most disgusting, atrocity committing savages on this planet are should be treated the same way as innocent Israeli civilians. That's what he means. That's what he means. And furthermore, it's the Hamas side. In other words, he wants hostage taking to work. Israel has no right to defend itself when hostages are taken. They must submit to whatever negotiations will cease any activity that would be against Hamas for killing people, committing atrocities, taking hostages. So this is the voice of Hamas right here. He is all in and all for Hamas, 100%. Hamas has, whatever the atrocities of October 7th, they are on a morally equal playing field as any civilized group of people in this world. There's no justification for Israeli military action, which must end immediately, and it should never, apparently, should never have happened. Apparently, after October 7th, they should have given Hamas whatever they wanted to get the hostages back as soon as possible. And so, the player that he leaves off the consideration radar are future hostages. That's not even, of course, Israelis should be subjected to October 7th after October 7th after October 7th. Of course, they should be subject to more hostage taking. And Israel should never defend itself and should comply with whatever demands Hamas makes when they take hostages. That is precisely what he's saying here. He's saying there's no difference between good and evil. They should be treated exactly the same, except when it comes to the innocence of the innocent civilian Israeli hostages of the future, who are just going to have to take it and suck it up and submit to whatever Hamas's genocidal demands are. They're the genocidal ones. No, and this man is educated enough to know better than that. But no, this guy would be the mayor of Hamas.
So, the people who riot in the streets nowadays claiming that there's a genocide that they want to stop. Back in October 2023, they were singing a very different tune. Here is one of them, Frances Hamed, who is from Hunter College. Let's take a look at what she was doing on October in October 2023.
To have this up here. What do you do? What is your name? Are you from Hunter?
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
No, 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 no.
Don't worry about
Okay,
it.
you will be all over the news.
Don't worry about it.
All over the news.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry
You're
about
so
it.
proud of
Don't
it.
worry about it.
What is your name?
Don't
What
worry
is your
about
name? Show your face. Show your face. Show your face.
Don't worry about it.
You're going to be. I'm not touching
You're
you.
harassing us.
Okay. No.
Okay,
No.
all right, all right. We've seen enough of her. For those who don't remember, right after Hamas slaughtered 1,200 Israelis and took 251 hostages, people in different places around the world, including New York, put up posters of the names of the people, names and pictures of people taken hostage, include which ranged from a 6-month-old baby who a month later was killed by a Hamas terrorist who smashed his head with his own hands. And I believe the oldest was 85, but people can correct me if I'm wrong. And so yeah, those posters were put up, and the Stop the Genocide crowd back then was going around tearing down these posters of people who were uh, taken from their homes, from a music festival, from their everyday lives, and kept in tunnels in Holocaust-like conditions. So this woman, as the thing said, is an intern in Zoran Mamdani's campaign. She's not the only one, by the way, but she is one of the interns who was doing that in October 2023.
Truly evil, truly evil. To try, I mean, he can mouth his, and it shows the contradiction too. He talks about hostages, but look at the contempt that his staff has for the actual innocent civilians that were taken hostage. They're not worthy of sympathy. Their pictures are not worthy of. We can't remind people of the atrocities and the hostage taking. Can't do that. No. So we can cut right through the BS on Mr. Mamdani about these hostages and how much he values them. He does not. He has utter contempt for them. His staff was willing to tear down the pictures of the innocent civilian victims of Hamas. He is pro Hamas. He is pro hostage taking. I could tell he was pro hostage taking from the first clip we played, but now you've got his staff out there tearing down. Okay, that's it. How much more evidence do you need? He is pro Hamas. He is pro hostage taking. I don't care what blather comes out of his mouth or his spokesman's mouth. I don't care. He is a jihadist, straight up. He is a jihadist and he is a Marxist. He can call himself a democratic socialist until he's green in the face. He believes in the seizure of the means of production, socializing food delivery, socializing rents, socializing housing, socializing transportation in the city of New York. He wants socialism in New York City. That's what he wants. And he would be overtly pro Hamas, pro jihadist. It's unmistakable here. Nothing could be more clear cut and clean in our analysis here. That is why it is such a super imperative that he not get elected. Now, I suspect he will. I suspect he will be the next mayor of New York. There's no good candidate, in my view, no perfect candidate. But what we have to do is get behind the guy who has the best chances of defeating this guy. This guy is the voice of evil in American politics today in a pure form.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier, he has no control over foreign policy, but he has control over the police, which he wants to defund and replace with some sort of Mamdani-approved security force, which won't have the same restrictions and oversight that the police has. And remember, people who are interns on a campaign, if their candidate gets elected, may very well get a job like that woman could end up being the head of the new police force, or at least a decision maker in some way. Remember, this is not somebody who has many bad policies and a few good ones. He has no good policies. He is across the board evil, and the things that he does have control over are not enough to throw Israel under the bus as the United States of America's official policy, but are absolutely enough to destroy New York City. The things that he wants to give away for free, somebody has to pay for. The people he wants to force to pay for it will not stay in New York City, nor will their money. So, yeah,
And that's
New Yorkers, I don't know
what an
what
irony.
well, you're not thinking if you're considering voting for this guy.
You're not thinking, you're feeling. I don't know what's going on in your head, but you got to check your premises, if I can borrow a phrase from Ms. Rand. No, 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 no. What's ironic is that it's the wealthy Upper East Side folks who gave us Mamdani. And the ironic thing is that they will too. But the point is, you're absolutely correct. You want to see a flight of wealth and producers from New York City? Wait till his policies come in. Even the people voting for him probably don't think through the long-term consequences of it. But I can tell you, there's a whole lot of well-to-do New Yorkers who it wasn't the working class who nominated Mamdani in the Democratic primary. No, no, no. It was your university-educated New Yorkers who did that. And I suspect some of them, of course, will stay. But of course, Some people are hell bent on suicide, but you're right. The most productive will probably be pushed out by his policies, insofar as he's successful in getting his policies through. In the meantime, we'll have to put up with a whole lot of ideological nonsense coming out of his mouth, supported by the standard media on the left, that'll defend him at every turn. No, it would be a dramatically negative turn in American politics. Please, people of New York, my friends, my brothers, my cousins and sisters of New York, please vote for Cuomo. Hold your nose. Vote for Cuomo. Mamdani is truly the face of evil in American politics.
Yeah, Akira says he will go after Jewish neighborhoods. Yeah, that's another thing to remember. New York is the city with the biggest Jewish population in the world, more than the next two cities afterwards, Jerusalem and Tel Aviv combined. And yeah, when you control the police force and you're intending to defund them anyway, you can also decide what little resource you send where and what you do with your new uh, no oversight fake
Oh,
police force.
heaven help someone trying to defend themselves on a subway.
And
They're the
and
ones
he's
who are going to be charged. Heaven help someone in a Jewish neighborhood in Brooklyn when the jihadists start protesting and doing vandalism and damage there. No,
that's
no,
the
no,
thing.
no,
He's
no. You
already
know what
promised.
side he's going to be on.
He's already promised, we talked about the campus intifada a year and a half ago, which started in New York and became a thing in New York that when others tried it in places like Georgia and Texas, it didn't really work out because the law enforcement officers enforced the law. In New York, they didn't enforce the law, but Mamdani thinks they did too much and is promised to do less. So he is already say it is an unofficial campaign promise of Mamdani that the moment he's in, it is open season on New York's 1 million Jews. When these people chant or demand in their protests that the Jews go back to where 6 million of them were slaughtered, this is basically their way of saying, at least the New Yorkers among them, of saying, you know what? If we can't send the Jews back to where they were slaughtered, we will make the place where Jews are a place that is as similar as we can to where they were slaughtered. Yeah, I don't know.
Columbia campus, in the midst of all of that, would what the New York government did too much as far as he's concerned. Now think about that. In other words, Columbia at its worst. No, this isn't just going to be Columbia and NYU again. This is the big universities in Manhattan. No, 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 no. The space that was that space of violence and fear for so many Jewish students on Columbia has now grown to all five boroughs of the city. So imagine Columbia at the worst of their pro Hamas demonstrations. If Mamdani gets elected, the whole of New York City will be in the same context. Really good point, Rosie.
Thanks on that very somber note. Thanks, James. Thanks everybody for watching. Not a much more positive note,
I'm
but
sorry.
yesterday's press conference with Trump and Netanyahu is the topic of today's episode of the reality show. We tried to make it the topic of yesterday's episode. We wanted to actually do a live stream and commentary because it was supposed to be at the same time as the show. Turns out they talked longer than they intended to, as we sometimes do on this show, and then talked longer than they intended to at the press conference. Once I saw that, I was really happy we're not live streaming that because what we have to say, no offense, Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, is more interesting than what you guys have to say. Thanks, James. Thanks, everybody, for watching. The reality show starts in a couple of minutes.
Be safe.